Hi folks, I'm the Bald Guy, and these are Bald Guy Basics. So I was going through my toolbox recently. I came across a very old tool, and it's a tool that perhaps you might need to make for yourself. This, which used to be a flathead screwdriver, is a staple puller, and you see the little groove there. Not to be confused with what you can buy at almost any hardware store, a tack puller. These are for upholstery tacks, but upholstery and also for nail trim tacks as well. Upholstery years ago shifted to pneumatic guns. I've got one over here, but I don't have my compressor hooked up. But this thing, it's semi-automatic. You can nail staples in, and I just found an old piece of scrap wood, which was a sofa leg. And if you see there, I just nailed some staples in. How are you going to get those out? Well, you might think it's really hard. You insert a knife point, or you can even try with a tack puller, and a tack puller will work, kinda. But watch this. Just while we're pulling there, now they're all over my desk, my bench here. I've pulled these out so easily. You simply insert the screwdriver, give it a little push, and then twist, and it pulls the whole thing out and holds it for you. So why would you need this? The most common use for something like this is if you have a piece of furniture that you need to make a repair on. I'll actually make a couple of shots. I see over here, we bought some furniture recently, and over here, kind of stored out of the way, I've got a couple of pieces of furniture, including an ottoman. Have you ever wondered how the black bottom that's on the bottom, that's what we called it in upholstery. I did upholstery for about 10 years. That very thin material on the bottom, so many times when I've had to move furniture for other people, I found that has been torn all to pieces. Usually, it's for as simple a reason as they dropped a quarter out of their pocket and they could feel it in the bottom there, and they didn't know how to take these off. Personally, I've seen a lot of repairs take place on recliners. Having a staple puller will allow you to pull it up without ripping the material and to make the repairs. And then you can use, you're probably not going to have an upholstery staple gun like I do. You can use a manual staple gun or even upholstery tacks to replace things. So what I'm going to do is show you how to make one, and we're going to make it. I just went to my old box over here and found an old flathead screwdriver. You want a screwdriver with a pretty good sized head. You don't want one of those really small ones. And you want one with enough body that you can get some leverage with your arm. So you're going to need a flathead screwdriver, and you're going to need something to cut with. I'm going to use my electric bandsaw over here. I have done this more times than one with just a plain old hacksaw. If you're going to use a hacksaw, you will be greatly assisted by having a vise handy to hold this thing exactly like you want it. And I'm also going to show you, I'm going to take a pencil and paper, and I'm going to draw you some designs. What you see here, I cut my groove in the very middle of my screwdriver blade. Then I go to my grinding wheel and I tapered it off. I've seen a couple of other designs, and I'll show you at least one of them. I did this so that when I pulled this, we carried an apron around our waist with our tools on it. Our scissors, which I've still got my old upholstery shears. These were with you all the time, and your staple puller was with you all the time. And you can make one where the puller is on one side, which means it always has to be oriented the correct way. I designed my own years ago, and I wanted it where I could work it from either side. So I'll show you a couple of other designs, or at least one that I can think of, and I have to show you those on paper. And then we'll go over here, and I'll simply show you the process of making it, and you can make your own. So bear with us. All right, I'm back. I've got a couple of examples. You see at the top just the basic profile of a flathead screwdriver. And what you do, one of these I saw most often, the offset puller with a rounded top. And you see what it only pulls from one direction. And then at the bottom, I found out that I didn't always have to round the top, although you did have to grind it back. The reason you have to grind it back is so the head doesn't get in the way of what you're doing. We were often upholstering where we stapled. We try to do it out of sight, so it's in tight places. And I just found that cutting it in the center, which I did not picture here, was a little easier because it made my tool ambidextrous for me. So there are some of the basic designs, but you simply start with your top plain screwdriver, and you choose where you want to cut that groove. And then next you just cut the groove down, and I cut it, well, you see there, I don't have a tape on me, but that's less than 1/4 of an inch after I've ground the jaws off. So it's not like you're cutting this thing for a long space, but you do want to cut it long enough that you can get your jaws not only on the staple, but actually under it. So I can get it in the jaws, because so often these staples will break off, and so you're going to grab it and twist it. So you want to be able to cut a narrow groove, but wide enough. And that will allow this to be a very handy tool for you, especially if you do any furniture repairs. So we'll come over to the bandsaw now and look at just how we're going to cut this. All right, I'm back, and yes, I have changed gears. I looked at my bandsaw, and the blade on it is not hard enough for this hardened steel. This is a place where a cheap screwdriver is actually better than a really fine quality hardened screwdriver. This one's pretty hard. I've decided to go with my high-speed Dremel tool with a cutting wheel, and the first thing I did is make sure that this was thin enough to fit in the jaws of my old one. The one thing you don't want is, I can go thicker, but I don't want to go too thick. The other thing you want to make sure is you're wearing eye protection with anytime you're using these high-speed tools, because you put too much pressure on this thing, it's going to fly apart. I also like to stand a little bit to the side so that it doesn't hit my face. And these novelty gloves are great additions to a shop if you're like me and your eyesight isn't what it used to be. Anytime I'm in low light conditions or shadow conditions, these are called Thanks Toms. You see the, put them down here where you can see them. You see the moniker there, THX-TOMS, and they're just battery operated, but they are a lifesaver in detailed situations. So let's see if we can cut a quick groove here. Worked like a charm. So you can see I've cut my groove just about that far. Now I'm simply going to go over to the grinding wheel and angle it off on both sides, and I will be done. All right, one of the things you have realized about my shop is I do not have a lot of space. I've got equipment everywhere, and I typically pull one to the front, use it, and then I have to slide it back and use the others. Hey, it's just the situation I have. So, just a little grinding here. Take your time. See how quickly I was able to take that one side off? One of the things you want to do is you want to have a pretty sharp point there. So you want to take it on down, and then I like to round them off a little bit. It just keeps you from, we'll work more here. But once I get it shaped, as I have this one, I'm going to go over here and we're going to pull some staples and see if it has any snags or hang-ups, or if I need to widen anything. And you just do a little adjusting. You can take off more material here if you want, but for the purpose of this demonstration, I think we're good. So let's see how it works. All right, here we are. We're going to try this thing out. If you have a magnetized screwdriver, it'll pick up these little steel staples wonderfully. I will tell you to be careful working around staples. In my 10 years of using a staple gun, sometimes you're stapling multiple times and you won't move quite enough. You'll staple one staple right down on top of the other. And before I was using safety glasses more than once, and even when I had safety glasses, pieces of these things will shatter and go out. And I've had them in my eyes a couple of times. Let's see how she works. I need to stand up. There's one, but it's magnetized. There's one that broke. Now, if you can see that, you want your jaws tight enough that they can get a hold of that thing. And sometimes you have to, see, it pulls it right out. It's a very handy tool to have. The angle here is what gives you your leverage to kind of lever it up, so don't make it too thin. There's one that's pretty deep. It's a pretty handy tool. I don't think that's got it on in it. That's already been pulled. So a simple staple puller. Let me get down here where you can see me. My belly's not the best thing to be showing, but I'll do one quick shot at the bottom of the ottoman over here so you can kind of see, if you've never really looked at it. On the bottom of all your furniture, you're going to find that's where the staples are. You simply release it and you can fold things up. And it's a really handy tool to have. It may stick in my toolbox for months, sometimes years at a time, because I'm no longer an upholsterer, except when something around the house needs repair. So keep that in mind. It's an easy tool to make. You watched it in real time. All right, you're just looking at the bottom of an ottoman that I flipped over. But what I want you to notice is all of these little embedded staples. That's what fastens these on. I didn't want to do it over here because the staples kind of disappear into the material, but you can see them over here too. That pointed edge of your tool fits right down in there, pulls those things off. And what it does in terms of this is what I was calling black bottom earlier. With black bottom, you can take and staple it back down and not have a ragged mess when you have to cut this stuff. So this is what I use it most of the time for, but I have found that I'll pull pieces of metal and staples and other things as well. So you can actually make it, even for fencing staples, you can make yourself a staple puller. You just have to cut a wider groove. This is the Bald Guy, hoping this helps you. Have a good day.